Hey friends, welcome to the Separated at Birth podcast with your hosts, Katie Martin and Karen Burke-Brown. This is the podcast where we find alignment in the most unlikely places, proving that lightning can strike anywhere at any time. We'll weave together a world of middle-aged empowerment as single moms, businesswomen, and creatives. Finding alignment, navigating relationships after divorce, raising kids, building businesses in the creative space, and doing the hard work of unearthing our very best selves in the process and having a lot of mother effing opinions about it. We're so stoked to have you here, so let's go. Let's get into the episode. Welcome. Okay. I have my beautiful friend Whitney here today. She's meeting Karen for the first time. Whitney is a native of California. She is just a beautiful, beautiful human being that I've had the blessing to know over the last, 5 years, I want to say maybe. She is a graphic designer. She's an entrepreneur. She's a mom. She, had a stint as a single mom in her past, which I think is of relevance to Karen in my story. She's, driving a business in the creative space, which is also very relevant. She's had her fair share of health issues and has kind of woven a journey of sort of hardship and healing and grief and, sort of the relationships and toxicities that we've been exposed to in our lives and trying to navigate how kind of pain manifests in our bodies through our emotional experiences and how brushed under the rug a lot of times it can be in the medical community that connection is there. And so as we stand here today, her dedication to her creative design business, her graphic design business has really funneled into helping practitioners in that space, in that healing space, that mindfulness space, that sort of alternative therapy space. She's the it girl for that niche. And, she's just a beautiful, beautiful human being. And it's one of those things where, Karen and I always say that when we bring a guest on, one of us is intimately aware of their story and the other one is just meeting them cold for the first time. So I know that Karen's going to have lots of juicy questions for Whitney that I already know a lot of the answers to, but I think for the listenership, that's important because I would miss asking questions because I already know that I think would be relevant and perfect for our audience to hear. So that's happening right now in real time. And Whitney, I just want to say thank you again for being here. We had a recent conversation on the phone and I was like, girl, you got to come on the podcast. You got to come on the podcast because there's so much about what we talk about, in private on our phone calls that I just feel would be so helpful and beneficial for the audience. So welcome. Thanks.
We're press record yeah. So we can just talk about this. I'm sure if we're going through something like this, mostly other people are going through something or similar. And I think it's a touch point for so many people. And, it's being vulnerable and, but there's a space for it. And so welcome because you're safe here. It's a safe place to be vulnerable. Yeah. I've cried, I don't know how many times here. So
I think Whitney's story is just one of resilience too. And so I'll just let her kind of dive in and wherever you want to guide the conversation, I know everything that's going to come out of your mouth is going to be relevant and important for people to hear. So wherever you want to start about, your story or maybe how we met or whatever is totally game.
Yeah.
So
Thanks. Well, thank you for having me. And I think a good place to start would be to share how I met Katie, because it'll pave the way of a lot of things that I want to share. So, as she said, we met about 5 years ago in the Saint world in network marketing, and at the time, I don't know if you know this, Katie. I'm not sure, actually. But at the time, I was newly diagnosed with a quote-unquote, I use quotes for this, incurable illness called interstitial cystitis, which is your bladder, your pelvic floor. And I was going to say,
I've never heard of that.
Pain. Yeah. It's actually fairly common. It's almost like the ulcers of the 2000s. When you remember ulcers being this big trend, everybody had stress ulcers. So pelvic pain for women is very common. There's a huge rise in it, and there's a lot of reasons for that, which I'll definitely talk on for a minute here. But so I was in a lot of pain, and I had to leave. I've always worked in the corporate design world, and I had to leave my job and pivot and figure out what to do because I couldn't go into work. I was in just, too much discomfort.
So can I interrupt? Because I'm curious, because I haven't heard of that, and you're saying it's so common.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Are you like fetal position? Yeah. Are you just like my chonch hurts? Yeah. Or does it feel like your stomach? Or, like where's that pain?
It feels like a UTI on steroids.
Oh, yikes.
So it's pretty debilitating for a lot of people. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's not like it's there to, for me, some women get it, flares and then it goes. I had it 24/7. So there was no break.
Oh my gosh.
It was, I was hovering between like a 7 and a 9 of pain every day. Doctors said, this is incurable. There's nothing you can do. Say goodbye to coffee, alcohol, sex, all the good things. Right?
Mm-hmm. Every pleasure in life.
And I was like, what? And I just remember sitting there and this urologist just kind of smiling told me this. And I was devastated. And, so it really freaked me out. And I had to leave my job and pivot but I still needed to support my family.
Sure.
We have a mortgage. We need my income. So it was like, okay, I'm going to go independent. I'll just start my own freelance business. At least, I can work while I'm home. And one of the things that, I was growing my design business, but I needed other income as well. And I joined what used to be Mascara and now, became Saint. And that's where I met Katie. And that was sort of the start of my healing journey, actually, because I started to notice some things when I would do my makeup and walk by the mirror and catch myself and think, you look good, like you look nice, you don't look sick. I started noticing that I would have better days with my symptoms when I would do my makeup. And I was like, what is this about? And
interesting.
I'm so fortunate that I somewhere on Facebook stumbled across some group with people who had what I had been dealing with, and some woman mentioned something about, check out this app called Curable. It really helps you with pain. And I was like, an app for pain? Like, what is that? How could
there's an app for everything, baby?
Right.
It doesn't make sense, right? So I go out of pure curiosity and almost like anger, like an app.
Let me see.
Sure.
So I go and I look at this app and I just binged it because I learned about the science behind pain. And I learned about really how our brain and our nervous system work as human beings, which most people in this world do not know. Even
the neurology of it.
Even doctors don't get this education. They don't understand chronic pain. They maybe have like a few hours of their whole training of chronic pain. They can treat acute things. They can treat injuries. They can treat, life-threatening things. But, when you go in and you have a chronic condition and they don't know what to do and they don't really know what's going on, this is why it's an epidemic. So
fibromyalgia, take 2 pills, IBS. Try this, call me tomorrow.
So, so if I were to list off some really common chronic conditions that a lot of, listeners probably can identify with and even maybe have: anxiety, depression, IBS, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, IC, the bladder condition, back pain, neck pain, knee pain, migraines, I could go on and on, right? There's a lot of people have chronic symptoms, and we just kind of learn to deal with it, but we don't, and then we really identify with the label we're given, right? Like, I have fibromyalgia. If you look up what is fibromyalgia, it's unexplained widespread pain. Unexplained. So what I learned as I started doing the makeup, and then I started learning about the science, and I'm like, hold on a second. Like and I went through every test possible. I went to functional medicine doctors, acupuncturists, like I did all the diets, I did everything, and nothing was helping me. I was only getting worse. The more I tried to fix it, the worse I got. And there's a reason that happened. So what I want to share and what I learned that I think everyone needs to know, because this is brain science and this is a movement. You're going to see this more and more because I work with people who are doctors now, are my clients, as well as pain psychologists, as well as people who were given these incurable diagnoses who completely recovered. These are my clients. These are the people that I service with my skill set, because, so I guess I'll cut to the chase. I fully recovered from this incurable disease as well.
Wow.
And I did it through rewiring my brain and understanding what was happening. So I'll back up a little bit and kind of, I guess, if you want, I can go into some of the science and just explain like the nervous system and the brain and what's going on, so that, you know, people can understand, how does this happen? How do people just out of nowhere, you know, because I was fine. I was fine.
So you like woke up one day and you were like, this is not normal.
Literally woke up one day and thought I had a UTI. Took antibiotics, you know, did the whole thing. No infection was showing up in my urine, but the pain persisted. So this happens, you know, and there's always a reason. There's always something that precedents this. And it's, you know, people might be like, what is it? What is it? But the answer is very obvious. It's stress. Mm-hmm. Stress has such an impact on our whole brain and nervous system. So let's say, I'll just use myself as an example, because maybe I think people will relate to a lot of experiences I've had. So, you know, my childhood was pretty good. Some people, you know, maybe they had a rough childhood, and that definitely can play a part. But, you know, there were things I experienced in childhood that were tough. Like I was bullied, you know, I had a really, tough critic in my life. I had somebody that was putting me down pretty often, and, you know, just doing a number on my self-esteem, you know, but overall it was healthy, you know, life was okay. But if you've ever heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Yes. There's something like there's like a bucket we have in us, in our nervous system, and it's called allostatic load. And what happens is those stressors, if you're not learning how to empty that bucket throughout your life, which are we really taught the effective ways to do that? Mm-hmm.
No, we're taught to take a pill, stuff what you're feeling, take a pill, and
avoid, you know, move forward, pick yourself up, keep going, especially as women, especially as a single mom. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this reservoir, this allostatic load keeps building. So for me, I know why I got sick now. And I know, you know, all the reasons. And it's because that was slowly building up. My baseline for my capacity to handle stress was shrinking because this was growing. Mm-hmm. And eventually it overflowed. And when it overflows, you get symptoms. And the reason that you overflow and get symptoms is because your brain is now thinking you're in danger, because this has gotten so high. And the only way the brain knows, it's a brilliant security system, but the way it gets your attention is it needs to send an alarm. It needs to get your attention. Mm-hmm. Because for a long time, we've been not looking at that stress, not dealing with that stress. We've been shoving it to the side, and we've been moving forward no matter what. So the brain eventually is like, hey, you know, Whitney, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Why are you continuing to move forward? So for me personally, I had been in some toxic relationships. Mm-hmm. I had been, you know, with narcissists, and, you know, my child's father became a drug addict, and
oh my gosh,
you know, ended his life. You know, there was some trauma. I started experiencing some traumas, and, you know, just so
That's
when
a
my
super big deal. That's not just,
It
well,
was a
like,
super big deal. I remember even just, again, 5 years ago,
huge
conversations with Whitney, just talking about like the aftermath of that and having, this young little baby and no husband all of a sudden and everything that led up to that point and, just the stories you tell yourself about how you're going to fix someone or save someone and they just, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not really in your hands.
And I was trying to fix and save and I was trying, and and I stayed in relationships I shouldn't have stayed in, a lot longer than but you get hooked in.
Oh,
right?
I know that.
And
yeah,
I mean, that's a whole other topic. I feel like, it has so many places you could go there, but
yeah, we need to do another show of it's when do you know when it's time to say to go? Yeah.
Well, and why are you staying?
What's in it for you?
What is happening subconsciously?
Yes, there's something in it for you. Correct.
Need for you. You're trying to not just fix them. You're trying to fix a wound in yourself through another person.
And if you've had those conversations about like why don't you? It's like, well, I feel bad. I don't want to leave them. Like I don't want to abandon them. When really it's like you don't want to be abandoned and you don't want. I had talking about the pain thing. I had a herniated disc in my neck years and years ago. And I remember the doctor saying, like, even after this heals, which it did, thank the Lord, anytime anything happens, that's where any stress, anything, that's where it's going to go. So years from now, you could think that you're fine, but it's because it's like a little bit weaker and almost like that's like your pain point, literally. And so that's truly what would happen. And I'd be like, oh gosh, I've got that pain again. I'd be like, oh my gosh, okay, what do I need to do? Can I exercise it out? Can I stretch it out? But it's one of those things, kind of like if you have, I don't know, if you have a heart condition, you have to take antibiotics before anything, because you go to the dentist, because the heart is where it's like the first place it's going to go. So it's kind of like that. It's like your little weak point. And if you don't take care of the original injury, you have all these other little offshoots. But that's like pain is the body's way of saying, like, that's your alarm system. And I think as a society, we are so programmed because of our medical community. It's, well, let's just fix the pain. They're not looking into, actually, you have a pain in your foot, but it's really not in your foot. It's actually coming from your knee. It's causing the pain in your foot. And so they don't kind of do that tracing back. They're just like, take 2 pills. Take 2 of these and call me in the morning.
But what Whitney's saying is that it is emotional.
Right. But you have to find out
like
where
it goes way deeper.
Right. Where is it really coming from?
Your hip bone is connected to your knee bone, Right.
You can't just keep masking it because the body will bring it. Oh, now it's in your waist. Now it's in your ribs. Now it's like
a new alarm.
Right. Yeah. You're not listening. Yeah. You're not listening until it will force you to listen.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's natural, when you have a physical sensation, a physical symptom, it's so human and natural to think that there's something physically wrong. I mean,
of course, you're like, but the pain is here.
Right? Yeah, right. So you think that there's damage. You think that there's an injury. And sometimes there is. Many times there is. And you go get checked out and you see what's going on. But if there's something that is chronic or continues to flare up, like your neck. Yeah. So there's something very interesting about herniated discs that I want to share, which is that the vast majority of herniated discs are actually not the cause of pain. And they've proven this through studies where they've taken MRIs of people who have no pain, and they've taken MRIs of a large group of people who did have pain. And the people with no pain also had herniated discs.
Interesting.
So that's when it was like, wait a minute, this isn't tracking. Why are some people with herniated discs having pain? And why are some people with herniated discs not having pain? Let's look at their life. What's going on in the people's lives who have herniated discs? What is their allostatic load? What is their stress level? So it's not even so much that this area for you is necessarily a weak point. It is what your brain has decided to turn on as an alarm
Makes
for
sense.
you. And it is familiar, and it is a learned neural pathway. So when it's effective, because I bet you when that hurts, what do you do? How do you respond? Are you like, oh, or do you just keep going? No, it makes you pause, I'm sure.
Because I'm like,
You're
I
kinda
can't go
like,
back to
uh-oh.
that place again. So, but what's
Yeah.
interesting is when originally when this happened, which was, 20 years ago, that's part of the conversation is, okay, was there a fall? Was there, some sort of traumatic event? What happened? I'm like, it was this gradual. I'd be like doing my makeup. I'm like, gosh, I can't, like, I couldn't do this anymore. But if you look at what was happening in my life, it was I had moved 3 times within, less than 2 months, like physically moved a husband and 1 child at the time. And it was, I'm in there throwing boxes, doing the thing. So I thought, oh, I must have turned funny or whatever. But of course, emotionally, I mean, we moved multiple states. There was just a whole host of just a bucket of shit, I like to say. So my bucket was super full. And that was only just the beginning of what turned into a mountain of shit. But that was, I'm sure, because again, the body knows, the body is telling you that it's like, you better take care of this now. And but yeah, it certainly got worse before it got better. But yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. And, ultimately, like what the brain is perceiving is that there's some sort of danger. In his, caveman times, like, our threat was like a tiger or, saber-toothed tiger coming and chasing us, and that would activate our fight or flight response. And, and then we would discharge that survival energy because we'd run and we'd get away from the saber-toothed tiger, and then we'd be okay and our system would regulate again.
Right.
And that's how our, system operates. That's what keeps us alive. But in today's world, we don't have saber-toothed tigers. We have different things, but that survival system is still there. So it's always scanning for us. And, things like relationships, technology, even social media, like,
those are saber-toothed tigers.
These are saber-toothed tigers now, right?
Right.
And our poor primitive brains that are constantly scanning for the saber-toothed tiger are now seeing, oh, well, that must be one, and that must be one, and that must be one. Or these really heavy emotions, or this, this change, even change can be perceived as danger because it's not familiar. Oh no. And so when the brain perceives any sort of danger, what is needed for that alarm or that symptom to turn off is safety. You need to, show your brain that you're safe. And that a lot of times for a lot of people, they'll have something like a migraine show up, or they'll have, maybe a period of a few months where they have some kind of, pain somewhere in their body. And for like you, it resolves. And a lot of times it's because what brought the safety to the brain was, getting some kind of treatment, and the doctor saying, oh, this is what's going on. So you don't need to worry. And this is what we're going to do. And everything's going to be okay. And then the brain's like, cool. Like, this is going to, so you start feeling like you're going to be okay. When you go in and you get diagnosed with something and there's no plan for you, like fibromyalgia or IBS or the bladder thing, you're not going to get that safety message. So that alarm is going to get bigger because it's like, there's the placebo, which is basically people take a sugar pill and other people take a medication, and, people taking placebo got better because they believed that they were going to be okay.
Yeah.
Alarms turn
and that they
down,
were going to get the regular,
they're safe, everything's okay. There's also a nocebo, which is you're not going to be okay. You have fibromyalgia, you have IBS, this is chronic, and there's nothing we can do. You're just going to have to manage this for the rest of your life. What do you think that does to that alarm?
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to
and
get
then
louder.
You're in this crazy search for coping mechanisms, mechanisms, and not a healing, not a way of healing. You believe that it's incurable. You believe that you're going to be in this thing for life. You form new beliefs that it's not ever going to get better, and that,
Yeah. And then what ends up happening is the symptoms themselves become the threat to your brain. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this whole kind of like effed up system that ends up happening is like the brain's trying to protect you. And then the thing that you're scared of now is the thing that the alarm that the brain is sending you. You know, this is how people develop anxiety disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is a normal emotion. It is, everybody will experience it at some point or not in their life, but it's when you become afraid of the anxiety and you see it as a problem and then you fight the anxiety that now the alarm of anxiety is going to keep going, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to keep having. So, you know, we have an epidemic of chronic pain and chronic illness in this world, but really it's an epidemic of fear. Fear is ultimately the root. And fear is what keeps things going for people that get stuck in this loop. It's a pain-fear cycle. And there is a way out. And there is a way to get better, but a lot of people don't know this. And so it's something I'm so passionate about because I see it everywhere. And I also have seen people recover from the most miraculous things that I didn't even know. Wait, is this actually a pathological disease or a structural problem, or is this a mind-body? So we call this mind-body. A mind-body condition, mind-body syndrome. There's lots of terms for this. People can look up and look into this, and they will find the people that will teach them. There's a lot of programs out there. There's a lot of experts, but mind-body syndrome, TMS, nervous system dysregulation. Those are kind of the main terms for this. Neuroplastic pain. So, you know, there is a way to get out of it and turn it off. I've seen people recover from autoimmune. A lot of women have autoimmune.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a fascinating story, recovery story of somebody who had autoimmune. And I've always kind of suspected, is autoimmune my body? I don't know. Because there's labs that are off. There's some physical signs that there's something going on. But again, why?
Where did it start?
Happening? Even if you are seeing it in labs, right? Even if there are physical changes, like people who have rheumatoid arthritis, I mean, they swell up. Like you're seeing your body have these physical, very real. I mean, all pain is real. All symptoms and discomfort is real. Whether it's caused by your brain or whether it's caused by your body. I mean, the brain is always the one making the choice to turn it on. So, but there's this fascinating story of this woman who, I was waiting for somebody. I was like, somebody's going to come in here one day in the mind body space who had autoimmune and recover. I'm just waiting for it because I'd heard of other people here and there. But this woman came in and she had a really severe case of rheumatoid arthritis, and her world was very small. She was in constant agony. She had, you know, swelling everywhere, fatigue and all kinds of things. And, you know, the traditional medical model wasn't helping her. I mean, they were just trying to manage it, you know, give her steroids and, you know, put her on antidepressants and, you know, all this stuff that was just sort of like trying to snap Band-Aids over this gaping wound.
Just masking everything.
Yeah. So she started discovering mind-body medicine, and she started learning the tools and the techniques that will bring her allostatic load down, that are going to teach her brain that she's okay, that are going to send these messages of safety. So some of these kind of just overview of some of these tools are things like dropping the label. Do not say you have rheumatoid arthritis anymore, because that is going to scare your brain. That is going to make you feel broken and like you are a problem.
Something's
that
wrong
needs
with
to
me.
Be fixed. Yeah. Ultimately, you need to believe and convince yourself that you are okay. And it's really hard to do that when you feel like shit. It's really hard because you're getting all the evidence that you're not. But it's a mistake. It's a mistake.
To speak to that, do you think that some people and some personalities need that. Like, okay, I've been feeling I feel so crappy,
Yes.
and I've got, and then they're like, oh, I've been diagnosed with rheumatoid. That makes sense. And then they
100%.
use that. Well,
Yes.
I have RA. So then
Yes.
that's a label
Yes.
that, again, people need labels for everything. And it's
do,
that
right?
self-fulfilling. And then they're like, okay, this is me. And this is how I go about, well, I can't do that because I have RA. So it's like they continue to reinforce that thought.
But they're using that diagnosis as a means of avoiding the real work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they don't even know that they're avoiding the real work, because really it's just misinformation that they're being given. So, and I'm not discounting doctors here, but
Right.
the fact of the matter is people are recovering from this stuff without doctors when they learn how to understand how their brain and nervous system works. So,
Yeah.
So
will you take us back to like your story and place us back into that and where we left off there and just walk through
picking up the
your
app
experience. Yes, you picked up the app and then.
Yes, definitely. I want to real quick, just with this RA story, there was something I want to say with this woman that was really, really important to hear. And now I'll go back to my story and you'll see kind of the common thread that happens for people. But when she started using these tools to teach her brain that she was safe and that she was okay, and the symptoms slowly started coming down, what she realized about her autoimmune disease was that the body always follows the mind. And she had her whole life this internal dialogue where she had a really, really loud inner critic, and she was constantly attacking herself. So her body started attacking itself.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's what she realized.
It's really
and
simple.
When she stopped doing that, her body healed. Her body stopped attacking itself. So this goes, there is psychology to this. This goes to the mind. People separate the mind and the body. Mental health, physical health. We are one system. We are both are influencing each other and communicating. Our brain is our body. So it's just the control center. So anyway, so I'll go back to my story. When I developed the symptoms with the pelvic pain, I had, gone through some trauma. Not everyone has to go through trauma for this to happen. There can be a slow build. There can be a trauma that's like, we're gonna fill that bucket really big, But what happened for me was actually there was nothing bad going on in my life. There was no oh my God, there was all this stress or, what happened was I got married and I bought a house and I was like, I'm going to live happily ever after. And my brain was like, hold on a second.
The fuck you are.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on a minute. Last time.
Hold my beer.
You got into a relationship and you made roots with somebody and started a family with them. Look what happened. It went real bad. Your life was in danger. That person went crazy and they died. You are not safe doing this. And the brain is so, so clever because what it did was it caused pain in an area that was going to affect my intimacy.
Sure.
Which is going to really put a divide in my relationship. Like, what? So,
but were you consciously thinking those thoughts that, this could go bad, or, were you,
I actually
you were like, everything's great.
No, it's the subconscious really runs the show,
God, that's
the body keeps
frightening.
The score, the body keeps the score.
Can I tell a very, very quick story that backs this up 100%? So when I was getting divorced, my therapist at the time was this grandmotherly British lady. I called her Mrs. Doubtfire behind her back, which I think she wouldn't have minded. It was like having tea with your British grandma, except you could say fuck all you wanted. And I loved my time with her, but she was telling me a story about when she lived in Great Britain and grew up there. She married very young, like 18, 19 years old, to a man who she thought she loved so much, but he turned out to be like out at the pub every night and was just like a serial womanizer. And as she started to learn these things and that he was just out all the time, she said, I had one yeast infection after another, like chronic yeast infections. And she goes, I got away from him, moved to the United States. I'm like 75 years old, 77 years old, and I haven't had one since. And she said it was my body protecting me from wanting to be at all intimate with this man, because it knew, inherently, I knew that he was out carousing and with all these other women. And as shitty as it was to have all those yeast infections, I'm grateful because I never slept with him.
Wow.
So crazy, right?
I have a friend, actually a very close friend, who was married, and their relationship was real rocky, and she was having chronic yeast infections, and she found out that he'd been cheating on her a bunch, but they weren't.
Oh boy.
She wasn't being intimate with him, so it's not like she was getting the yeast infections from him,
Right.
like
Mm-hmm.
being with someone else and coming here. No, it was, our bodies are so wide, our brains are so good at protecting us, and we just see this as a problem. Oh my God, I have
Right.
yeast infection after yeast infection.
You're screwing up my life.
Yeah. But actually, like, if you think about it, it's like a very loving,
Right.
protective
It's like, girl, I
thing.
got you. I'm trying to help you. Like,
Yeah.
help me help
We're,
you.
we're closing the shop.
Yeah.
It is closed
Yeah.
for business.
And when you can
Isn't that
see
incredible,
it that
though?
way,
Yeah.
when you see it that way, it helps dial down the fear.
Yeah.
Because then you realize, oh, here's what's going on. This is just my brain and my body protecting me from something. Let me get curious about what that could be,
Yeah.
And that's what I had to do. I didn't know this right away. It's not like I got the pain and then I figured out the brain science and then I was like, this is why,
Yeah.
I really
And I'm
had
fixed.
to I really
This is
had
years
to,
of digging and, like, as she said, being very
it took
curious
me
about what
about-
was going on.
It took me about a year and a half to completely recover. And, I think
And at
it's
that
good
stage, Whitney, how long had you been suffering?
about a year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
about a year, maybe
Yeah.
a little over a year. I'm fortunate. I'm very lucky that I only had a year of that hell
Yeah.
before I discovered mind-body medicine. If I had never found that, there are women who are 20 years, 30
Oh my God.
years, 10 years, 15 years
Gosh.
in that boat. And, it's...
It's horrifying to think about.
But the thing is they all get better. They all can get better, and a lot of them have. But anyway, so, for me, it took, about a year and a half. I would say, like, I'm also lucky that I was able to see why my brain made this choice to sound this alarm. I don't think you have to figure out, because people can get lost in that. They can go forever. What's the one thing that caused this, and I need to fix
Right.
it?
Yeah.
And then
You're
it'll
just
turn
peeling
off,
back the
and then
onion,
you're
and then
just-
you become obsessed with peeling the onion and thinking that there
Right.
has to be more. Yeah.
Well, and then they're like re-digging up old trauma and like all this stuff, and it's like, you don't need to do that. It's helpful if you can kind of zoom out for a minute and be like, oh, I was having a lot of stress, or I was moving, or okay, like I get it, that's why the alarm's there, but you don't need to like go get all tangled in that and be like, well, what were my emotions there, and what, and why did I have those emotions, and where's that coming
Yeah.
from? Like, people can go.
You
and
almost
that's
hang
just
your
keeping
hat on
the
the
alarm.
idea that if you don't get to that root, that you'll never heal that's another lie you're going to tell yourself, is that unless
exactly.
you really get to the core of it, you're never gonna.
Well, maybe that's what you're
Find a way
saying
out of
too, is that's the beauty of the magic of the brain, is that if you treat it right, or you don't have to find the thing, it's not about the thing, it's about the brain. And so if you can get it to that safe place, and
it's just exactly.
then it'll
That's
chill,
what's
and everything
key,
chills.
right?
I think it's about really just like harnessing the fact that your brain is going to do in its own subconscious work what it feels is necessary until you, as the master, the puppet master,
The host.
step in and say, I'm in control and I'm making active choices to silence that inner critic. I'm making active choices to not believe the lies that I'm unsafe. I'm making active, it's not a passive amount of work. It's tons of choices.
Yeah.
And
Very
the
cool.
huge thing I would say, there's two huge things I think that people need to recover when it's a chronic mind-body condition. And one is, first and foremost, is education and awareness. You have to understand what's happening and why. And I'm a science girl. So if you show me studies and I'm seeing like that, like for example, there's a study that has proven that, if somebody had an injury, let's say they hurt their knee, well, almost all injuries recover within 3 to 6 months. Like none take longer than that.
That's incredible.
I've
been dealing with some hip shit for a year, Whit. Damn it. That's really good to know.
It's coming from your brain, Katie. It's not really your hip.
I mean, I need an MRI just to be sure, but if that MRI comes back perfectly fine, then I'm calling Whitney up and we're... Yeah. Right.
Most injuries heal, like even your biggest bone, your femur, will heal if you break it in half within 3 to 6 months. So the body heals. The body takes care of itself. It knows what to do to heal. So if something is continuing beyond 3 to 6 months, that's when it gets labeled as chronic. Well, something like 98, 99% of chronic pain, chronic conditions is neuroplastic. It is the brain learned.
Whoa, that's a huge statistic.
Yeah.
That's
it's
a lot.
Massive. This is why I get passionate about this, because people don't know this information. And it's like, we got to change this paradigm. There needs to be a paradigm shift. People need to know this information. They need this education so they can feel well. And you can get well for free. Like, if you just learn this, like, it didn't cost me any money.
So you found the app and you started it and you started feeling better. And then that got you onto kind of this train of, wait a second, there's so much more here.
Yeah. So once you start getting the education, which the app really helped me with, and the app is called Incurable.
I'm going to look it up right now. I'm like totally adding it to myself.
So
really.
I started learning about the science in the beginning.
We need to put that in the show notes, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the beginning, Incurable was my client for 3 years. So I did all their social media design. I've done a lot of their app design. So there's, I'm very,
you'll see Whitney everywhere.
Love Incurable. Yes. But so Incurable is what started me on learning the education. They up the very beginning, when you get in the app, it's all about teaching you. And nothing goes in the Incurable app that is not backed by tons of studies and research. Okay, they're not just like willy-nilly, like woo-woo, like
doling out advice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I started learning, and then I started the next step is starting to gather evidence that your symptoms are in fact mind body or neuroplastic. And this is where you start seeing there are certain ways that neuroplastic symptoms behave that injuries don't. And this is where it's kind of fun, because you can start seeing the cracks and you're like, wait. So for example, like if your symptoms came on during a high period of stress, very high likelihood that it is mind body. If your symptoms come and go, very high chance that it's neuroplastic. Injuries don't just come and go with how they hurt. They hurt the whole time until they heal. So, they don't kind of go up and down like this.
I think we think that injury it kind of goes dormant, but it never really heals. And then that trick shoulder is bothering me again. I think that's kind of how we sort of visualize it just never really got better. So that makes sense, that it's always there.
Yeah, we think it's weak, but it's not the part of the body, even if you had an injury. So one of the studies that's really fascinating to me is that they have done brain scans of people who had an injury at, the 3 month or the 1 month mark or the 2 month mark. And by the way, when I say injury, the other thing with injuries is when you have an injury, it hurts right when you injure yourself. It's not going to show up 2, 3, 4, 5 days later. So if you were like moving boxes and a week later your neck hurts, that doesn't track with an injury. An injury hurts when you injure it, not later. So delayed onset of pain is a sign it's neuroplastic.
Interesting. But, wow.
Yeah. There's so many.
I like this investigation.
Yeah. So the study I want to show you or tell you about too is when they've scanned the brains of people who did have a true injury. Let's say, you tore a muscle or a ligament,
blew your ACL,
or, whatever,
playing sports,
anything. Right? If they scan your brain within those first 3 months, the areas that light up in your brain for the pain are in, a certain location, kind of in the back of your head, which are areas of your brain that are associated with injury, with pain. But when they scanned, if those people's pain lasted longer than 3 to 6 months and they scanned their brain again, but they still had pain, the areas that were lit up in their brain that were signaling the pain moved into the emotional
belief
system of the brain.
Wow.
Yes.
That's proof.
This is learned, and it is tied to fear, and it is tied to your beliefs, and it's tied to your stress. So stress can take an injury that healed, that is okay, but keep the pain signal going. It can it becomes learned. It's like a light switch that got turned on because something happened, but like the brain never, it never turned, the switch didn't turn off, but like everything's okay with your body now. So this signal is still firing, and you need to learn how to turn it off by rewiring the brain.
That's really interesting.
A moment ago you said there are 2 huge things.
Yes.
One is education, and what is the other one?
Education awareness.
Can I take a guess?
Education is the evidence. Sure.
A person to support you that also believes that, or no, you don't need that. I feel like it would be very difficult to try to explain uncovering these theories about yourself and telling someone and having that person tell you that you're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I
would
think
be very defeating.
And having support is an important part of this. So maybe that could be a third thing. But I do think it's important.
I would need that in my life. I would need to be surrounded with people that are not corroborating what I say, but also saying there is a lot of validity to where you're going with this.
Yes.
Keep going, keep digging, keep searching.
You're feeling better.
I believe what you're saying. Yeah. I believe you. Isn't that incredible that as human beings we need validation?
Yeah.
So badly.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, because they don't know this information, they will look at you like you're crazy, and they'll be like,
I think also because
you've
been shut down, especially if you've been shut down by the medical community so badly.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? If you're in that pit and you're like, something is fucking wrong, and I feel like I've just been stonewalled in all these areas, and then you finally go down this path that you feel and have this belief like, shit, this is starting to work for me, and then you have people like, you're a quack. You're a total quack. If you
or like you said, you don't look sick, or then if you got rid of it, you never really had it.
And that speaks to the greater fear in society that if it's new and unknown, it must be bad, right? So the fear, that's their fear that they're projecting on you, saying you're a quack because you're saying this is working for me and it's a mind-body thing and there's all the science to back it up, but that's not widely accepted by the medical community, so therefore, and that's their fear because it's not, it's an unknown. We fear the unknown.
Well, and they can't make money off of you healing yourself.
For free.
That's really what it comes down to.
Big Pharma's going to come for you, honey.
Right.
That's it.
There's no paycheck to be made if I'm in control of my own shit.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so what is the actual second thing?
Back to heal themselves.
Yes.
What are you going to do, right?
Right.
So the second thing is teaching your brain that you're okay. Doing the work. You need to do those 2 things. You're not going to do the work unless you understand what's happening. You need to understand the computer before you can learn how to work with the computer.
In your daily
which is your
life,
brain.
as you were beginning to learn these things and you would catch yourself feeling pain, would you just sit with yourself and say, okay, I'm going to be curious right now about the sensation that I'm feeling, and then where? And then where would you go with it?
Yeah. So,
You're like, I'm
I mean, a lot
experiencing
of
pain in my
times
pelvis. How did you negotiate that in the moment?
I had to learn how to change my response to it, first and foremost, and my relationship to the sensation. Because originally it was rooted in fear and fixing. I need this to stop. This is too much for me. This is pain. This is so painful. I hate it. I would go into a dark place of despair and fear. And, I would stop living my life. I would go home and lay down and, curl up in a fetal position. That was my original response. But that just kept the alarm going. So what I had to do was I had to learn, and it takes so much courage, but I had to learn how to respond differently so that my brain could learn that I'm okay. So the way that I would respond was, it kind of depends on the level of the sensation, but if it was like, let's say moderate to mild, my response was, I'm okay. This is a misfire. There's nothing wrong with my bladder. There's nothing wrong. And it sounds like you're gaslighting yourself. But the thing is,
right.
yeah, stop it. But sometimes I would talk to my brain. And this is where people definitely start to think you're crazy. But I didn't care. I didn't give a shit. I just wanted to get out of pain. And I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
If people think I'm crazy, let them think I'm
go
crazy.
ahead.
I just want to feel better. And if this works, then joke's on you guys. This
Right.
works,
Right.
I feel myself.
Which was empowering. Like, it was kind of like, I don't care. So I would talk to my brain, in my head or even out loud sometimes. I would just say, knock it off. There's nothing wrong. I am okay. So sometimes, I took a firm stance in my response. And I would say, I'm in charge. You can be here. You can be here, symptoms, but I'm running the show. So you can, we're going on a road trip. You can sit in the back seat, but you don't get to give me directions. You don't get to tell me, what snacks we're getting. Like, I'm in the driver's seat. So, it's kind of like you're using your prefrontal cortex to now take control of your primitive brain.
The override
that is back
system.
Here, that's like, and you're like, no, and when you do this with repetition, that's neuroplasticity in action. You're going to build new neural pathways. Eventually, with changing your response and your behavior, that alarm, your brain eventually is like, why does Whitney keep going and living her life? Why is she getting on a skateboard with her kids? Why is she going out to dinner with her husband? Why is she having sex? Why is she drinking wine? Why is she doing all this stuff? We're not supposed to do this. I guess we must be okay. Because she's behaving like she's okay.
I sat in a seminar one time with this beautiful photographer who her name is Sue Bryce, and I learned from her for many years. I followed her closely and just her business, and she would talk about like she would build like $1 million brand and then like lose it all. So she had built these incredible photography businesses and then literally lost all the money because she had a hard relationship with keeping money. She could make money, she just couldn't keep money. And there was a terrible inner critic in her that just kept saying, you're not worthy of keeping it. Like, great, good for you. You're an awesome photographer. You're in high demand. Awesome. But there was something inherent about how she just couldn't keep it. She'd make terrible decisions with it. And that was the override system. And she said, sooner or later, I realized that there was this like second being inside of me that I had allowed to just run free. And she said, I would tell myself when it would show up, and this stuck with me, the way she said it. She said, oh, I know you. You're a liar. And she would just turn in her mind and walk the other way. It was like walking into this person, like you've had that friend that's a frenemy.
Yep.
They appear as a friend.
Like, oh, you again.
But really they are just a bucket of lies. And it takes recognizing the liar. And the way that she put, I know you.
It's a great
liar.
point of view.
When that inner critic starts to flare and show up.
I love it. And that's so
heel turn.
Yeah, well, right. And you can do that with the chronic symptoms. And it's hard because, in a sense, you are suffering and you want to have some compassion for that experience, right?
Yeah.
So you have to sort of find this balance of like, can I do that empowering stance right now? Or am I at like an 8 or 9 out of 10 and I just need to soothe myself, give myself lots of love and compassion to help my brain feel a little safer. And then we're going to have a talk, with it.
Yeah. Right.
So, but that perspective, I mean, that's sort of in a way very similar to how I would respond as well. It was sort of like, I've seen people get better. I've been in this community of the mind-body medicine space for 6 years now. And like I said, my clients are people who are helping people. So I'm seeing, all these people that are getting better and what they're saying and what worked for them really well. And that's where the community comes in. When you start meeting people who are doing this work alongside you and you start seeing, Susan started saying, "You're fake," when her pain would flare up and she got better. I'm going to try that, And so you start kind of like learning these like little tips and ways to respond because other people are doing it. And then you don't feel crazy because you're like, guess what I did today? I said all this stuff to my brain and they're like, yeah, good job. That's a good one, so find your people who are doing this work. Curable has a Facebook group and a community.
I love that.
Yeah. I understand how like that part of it, like if you're in some seriously like acute pain where you're just on the floor, maybe the approach then is to just express gratitude for your body for trying to help you cope with whatever it is that you're feeling. Like, thank you for sounding the alarm, telling me that I need to slow down, telling me that I might need some rest right now, telling me that I might need to just nourish myself in a way that, surround myself with good people, hug my dog, whatever I can, what I mean, to just...
That is the thing. Your body, you will pay the price. You're either going to pay it now or pay it like the body keeps score. Like we've been, we started with it. It's going to come out. It's just how and why and how does it manifest itself.
So at this point, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and hopefully, for anyone listening that doesn't have anything that's chronic, maybe they have stuff that appears here and there. Getting armed with this information now is going to prevent it from becoming chronic, because if you can start learning now how to respond when something like once a month migraine happens or, something like that, and you realize, oh, okay, what's going on in my life? What do I need to do for myself? What's a need that's not being met for me right now? Do I need to set a boundary with somebody? Do I need to just, slow down a little bit? Do I need to stop people pleasing? Do I need to be nicer to myself? What is going on that is really getting me to spill over right now? And people who recover doing this work always say the same thing, that in the end it was a gift, because what they ended up doing was they ended up coming home to themselves. They learned how to take care of themselves properly. And what you were saying, when your pain is really high and it's kind of like, well, I can't go swimming with my kids right now. Like, it's too much. Like, I'm not superhuman here, maybe that's when I learn what I really need is I really need to soothe myself and be kind to myself and give myself patience and grace and compassion right now, and don't have any mom guilt, and make sure that I'm, really like giving myself a lot of love and pampering right now. Maybe that's what I'm needing when it's really high. And when you start to figure that out, okay, when I'm at this level, this is what I need to give myself. When I'm at this level, this is what helps me. Like, you build this relationship with yourself and your body, and you kind of start to feel like, oh my gosh, like I understand what my body's saying to me now. And I'm learning this, like this language that it's communicating to me. And I'm knowing how to respond to it instead of dismiss it or,
rally.
Or
that's what I say. I gotta keep
or getting into fear,
Well, Katie and I talk about that, like what the difference between self-care and laziness. Where do you draw the line? And to me, like, self-care is kind of a buzzword or buzz term, but knowing the difference between, I got to just shut down. If I don't shut down now, it's, and for me, it's like sitting on the couch, which I just don't do. And right now it's kind of a slower time for me. So when I do, I'm like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm going to sit. But if anyone was to walk in, they're going to think that, oh, you're sitting on the couch again. Like, I just don't do it. So it's, even when I am trying to do the self-care, I'm like, People are going to think I'm lazy. People are going to think I have 27
Mm-hmm.
other things I should be doing. So I agree, finding that balance. And this is like a whole, I mean, I already downloaded the app. We all need the help. And I think it's all about the journey anyway. And the better you can know yourself and, listening to the cues and really paying attention and then focusing on that and not compartmentalizing, which I do often. I have to deal with that later. Like I can't deal with this now. I'll put it away and I will deal with it later. But then all of a sudden you're like, I got a library full of deal with it later because I've got too much to do. So, but then it's like, okay, well, those pages are going to open and all those books are going to fall over on you eventually if you don't go in and open that up. So I totally get what you're saying. I'm super on board. I love it.
I think as women, we have a hard time resting. A lot of women have a hard time. Just as a society in general, it's so fast paced. But one thing that helped me, because I'm the same as you, and especially when I was dealing with symptoms that gave me no choice but to sit and not do much. It was hard. I felt so guilty. Like,
Didn't it put you in a bad mood? Like pain makes me like mad.
100%. Yeah, totally. But what helped me work through some of that, and even now, even if I'm feeling okay and it's like, but I can sense that I'm just needing to chill and rest and not feel bad about it. One expression that has helped me work through that and not have the resistance to it is that we're not human doings, we're human beings.
Yeah.
We need to be.
Yeah.
We need to be able to let ourselves be.
Yeah. I think we've lost a lot of that too with like the digital age, is that we don't idle very well.
No,
Yeah.
we're on. Yeah, going.
We're constantly
doing
consuming
something.
information. We're not just like...
Remember when we were kids? Wait, you're a lot younger than Karen and I, but I remember just going in the backyard and laying in the grass and looking at the clouds and looking and trying to identify what the clouds look like if they look like animals or shapes or whatever, or riding in a long car ride with my parents and
looking out the window,
and they didn't talk to us and we didn't necessarily talk to them the whole time. We were just with ourselves. Having dialogue with ourselves. And
I tell that to my kids. I'm like, look out the window. Like, use your imagination. They're like,
yes,
what?
Have a conversation with yourself.
Right.
Well, those slower present moments where you're really in your environment and you're really just noticing it it sends such a powerful message to your brain that you're safe. Because if you're like, I gotta do this and I gotta do this and I gotta go here and I gotta do that, that's sort of this, survival energy. That is a frantic fight or flight energy. Yeah. And these chronic conditions, they keep coming up with new names for all these new things that keep happening. Why is it accumulating? Like, why are we going in this direction? People didn't have this way back when so much. Because times were more simple. We had so much more time just sitting and looking at clouds and, all of that. So it's important, but it's hard to break the habit.
If you guys will give me like 2 minutes, I'm going to give you a little bit of a vulnerability in this moment. And I know that this is something that Whitney completely predicted when she called me right after the first of the month. This podcast and recording this podcast right now for me in my life in this moment is so critical. I am on the edge of a massive backsliding of myself. So on July 1st, there was this massive shift in my career and 95% of my income just vanished like that. And it wasn't my fault. And I'm a single mother with 3 children, and I have been left with this just vortex of emotional stuff. There's the survival piece of it, what am I going to do? We must fix, we must act, we must recover, we must, it's a very reactive kind of an energy.
Yeah.
Survival instinct kind of kicking in. And as a result of that, it is now, the 23rd? For the last 2 weeks, my body has snapped into massive gastrointestinal trauma. I am bloated.
You had a fever?
Bacterial problems. Literally every every bite of food that I'm putting into my body is turning into this massive, like, 9-month bloating, which is always what has happened in the past. And if I hadn't had other past experiences with this type of stress onset issue, and I know this is going to sound so crazy because in the past, in my brain, I have this part of me that says, oh, here you are eating the shit sandwiches again. And what do you know? I get full of this, like, gastrointestinal. That's what I say to myself. Here we are eating more shit sandwiches. You're just going to have to hork it down and, deal with it. And therefore yes, I had a fever a week ago and I've been traveling and I've been, it's like there's this calamity of, like, schedules and prior commitments and then also the fear of, do I plug myself back into an industry that has just proven to me unsafe? It's like Whitney and getting married again. It's like, do I get married to a new company and then risk it going just as bad as the first one did? So that I'm worried about that. And then you're just basing so much of your responses and your choices based on, like, a fear response rather than this confidence and belief. And I know that there are Saint girls that listen to this podcast, and I want them to hear that, like, what they might be feeling, I'm dealing with it right now. And I can feel this backsliding. I'm tired all the time. I have no motivation to work. I have no creative spark. I literally took 3 naps yesterday, 20-minute naps, and then I went to bed at 9:30 and I woke up exhausted. It's like I can't sleep enough. That's depression, So I feel I feel myself sinking deeper and deeper into it. And so this is so critical for me right now. Yes, so critical. Yeah. And it's like, I know a lot of what I know I need to do, but there is a massive voice in there that just says, you're going to lose everything. You're going to lose your house. You better sell your car. You know what I mean? There's just all of that. No one's coming to save you. And yesterday I posted on Instagram, this was just some repost from somebody. The only person who's coming to save you is the version of you that's sick of the current version of you. Frustration ignites the level up. Keep going. So it's like, I have to get so frustrated with how I feel right now that I'm willing to change the dialogue. I'm willing to change. Like, I can't take this anymore. I can't take the bloated. I can't take fearing that every bite of food I eat is going to turn me into this gross, disgusting monster, and I'm in the bathroom all day long and all night long. Like, I'm no good to my family. I'm no good to my kids. I'm no good to my business. I'm no good to my clients. I'm half-assing everything. Everything is devoid of passion and, intention. It's all just reaction. It's all reaction. So anyway, I had to add that in because I know the timing of this is so critical for so many people that are in my situation that are dealing with the same thing. It's devastating. What happened to us is devastating. Yeah. And I know they have their reasons, and we're still trying to fly the flag, but it's a real threat in my life. Yeah. Well, and instead, I know that the narrative needs to be, Katie, you are so gifted. Katie, you are so creative. No one can take that from you. Katie, you have so much drive and ambition. Katie, you have raised this beautiful community. Like, now you get to choose where you want to go. Your life is the world is your oyster. You have a bounty of options.
Flipping the script on life.
I have to just coach myself up into that the opportunity is everywhere, that I am not destined to fail. Because again, the one beautiful thing about this whole situation is it's not my fault. I didn't fuck up. I did everything I needed to do. I didn't fuck up at all.
Even if you did fuck up,
and even if I did,
the conversation is the same. Like, you're this, you're that. This is what you aren't. You aren't, a loser. You aren't, you aren't going to be homeless. And you and I are so much alike. It's freaking
crazy,
bizarre. But it's always the same. Like, all work will be okay, but there's always that fear of, I could lose my house. What if it's always there. So I do things. I try not to make decisions out of fear, but, moving forward with different things where I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna do it anyway, stepping out on faith. And it's hopefully like retraining your brain, just like we've been talking about, because I'm a silver lining person and seeing the good and not the bad. Like, the bad's always going to be there, but the good, I need to keep talking through the good and making sure that, you know what, I still have this, and grateful and thankful and living there. But it's hard because your inner voice is still saying, yeah, but the electric bill. Yeah, but the car payment. Yeah,
and then we isolate because it's very hard for us as heads of household too to admit that things are not going well, and we don't want to air our laundry to the world.
Who's going to help you?
Who fucking cares anyway, right? And then I start isolating, and like Karen's been calling me every day, and I take 4 or 5 days.
We
talk every day. Yeah. We talk every day normally, and she's like, I know what's going on. I know you are hiding out.
I'm like, I get it because I do the same thing. So I'm like, I don't have anything to add to the conversation right now. And I just need to be within myself to figure my shit out because nobody can figure it out for me. So I'm just like, and I'm giving you your space.
Bless friends that give you that recognition too. Like, she's not taking anything personally. Like, Katie, what's wrong? Why are you not talking to me? Same thing with my friend Lisa. She's like, I know you're struggling. I could feel it. You're disappearing on me. Right. And I just kind of go under the rock for a little while, and I love that they are willing to like hold that space for me and be like, I'm here when you're ready to come back to the conversation. Like, there's no problem. You know, that's really awesome and loving.
Or I'm ready to talk about it now. You know, I'm ready to share my brain kind of thing. Yeah, I get it. Totally get it.
Okay, Whitney, give me your wisdom.
Is good to do. But I want to point out something. When you're talking and you're saying, what about this bill and what about this, and you're going to lose your house, and those are protectors in you. So I don't know if you've heard of something called parts work, but it's something that people in the kind of mind body space lean into a bit. There's a book actually called No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, and basically, the whole premise of this is we all have parts inside of us, and a lot of times those parts fight with each other. So you have a part in you that is this survival energy that's like the single mom badass that's like, I cannot let this ship go down. You need the fear right now to get you to act. So the fear itself, as unpleasant as it is to be feeling terrified of what's going to happen, what am I going to do? It is energy that is going to make you act. Yeah. So don't resist it. See it as something that is helping move you forward, that is propelling you. It's a survival energy that you're needing. But also, like, trying to have some compassion for that part of you when it's showing up, when you're noticing those thoughts of what if I lose my house? What if I lose this? Like your friend, I know what you are. You're a protector. You are protecting
where it gets real sticky, and this is where it's like, I know better in my head, but how do I fight off that I'm literally falling asleep with myself? Like, I can't keep my eyes open. I'm so fatigued. I'm literally, and I am like, I'm depressed. This is depression. I cannot stay awake. I'm escaping. My body is literally shutting down. Also, the GI stuff. Like, I am big as a house in 20 minutes after I eat anything. It's unbelievable how big my stomach gets. And I've dealt with all of that before, but it's like, how do you get out of that physical? There's nowhere to hide on that,
Start looking at the Curable app.
Okay.
I downloaded it already while we were talking. I did.
See that also depression, these gastro symptoms, these are alarms. So your brain right now is deploying multiple alarms, and a lot of times these alarms can kind of compete. Like the fear that's like, I got to get moving, I got to figure out what I'm going to do. But then the depression is like, no, you're not. And so you're, and this is where we start having an internal conflict.
Yes. Oh, you have this great idea to go start this other business, but you're too fucking tired to even take step one.
Right. So this is where that inner critic part comes in. And next thing you know, you have all these parts of you that are fighting with each other. And guess what that's going to do? It's going to exhaust you. It's going to
keep you still. Yeah. And you're just running on a treadmill.
It's exhausting. So the no bad parts, the parts work is great because it's a beautiful vehicle towards self-compassion. You got to weave in some self-compassion right now.
Yeah.
And let all of these parts be there And a lot of times, if you just listen to them, like what I would say when you're going through a really tumultuous time of a lot of change and like scary, like uncertainty with what's going to happen in your life, these parts, for them to simmer down and kind of stop fighting with each other, they really just need to be heard. So, you know, a really beautiful exercise for you could be sitting down and just saying, there's a part of me that's terrified of my life right now and losing everything. What does she need to tell me? And
there's a part of me that's like, you're 46 and here you are starting over again. Like,
but let
fucking
her
failure.
talk.
Yeah, like,
but let
right.
her
It's
talk.
so
it
bad.
It sounds counterintuitive because it's like, oh, I shouldn't listen to that. That's a critic. No. That's really dangerous for me. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to get really depressed. What we resist will persist. If you're like, shh, stop. I can't keep having those thoughts. That's terrible. You actually, it sounds scary. This is the hard part of this is doing the work though. This is recovery in action. And this is you coming home to yourself, is take 30 minutes and say, baby girl, tell me everything. And I'm going to listen to you. So your higher adult Katie right now, this is also inner child work, is going to listen to this terrified girl. Let her say everything to you like she's crawling on your lap and she just needs to tell you that she's scared. And it's okay to be scared. And then
now I'm crying.
But see, this is good. This is good. This is energy. This is good. This needs to come out so that you're not stuck. So listen to her, and then at the end, talk to her the way you would talk to a friend.
Yeah.
What would you say if I came to you and I was like, Katie, I'm terrified. I'm so
freaked out.
What would you say to me? What would you say to me? I know what you would say to me. You would give me that pep talk. You would tell me that everything's going to be okay, and you would flip the script. But you have to listen to that part of you that's scared before you flip the script. It's going to be really hard for you to flip the script if you just keep keeping her quiet. If you keep trying to shut her down, and then you keep trying to flip the script, you're having a conflict. So let her air it out. It's gonna. You'll see. It's gonna be a lot easier for you to soothe and flip the script if you let those terrified parts speak. Because we're so used to shoving our fear away. We're so used. It's scary. Who wants to feel that way? It's awful. But you gotta lean in and hear and listen to that part. And even the part that's sad, there's grief here. Like, so there's different parts, and they all need to be heard. And so what I would say, as your friend who loves you dearly, going through the transitions that I've been through and discovering mind-body work, is I would say for the next 3 months at least, every day, sit down, take 30 minutes, and listen to these parts of you, and then soothe them. So you have a sad part that's grieving that needs to talk to you about the loss, that needs to tell you how devastating this is to lose something that was a huge part of your life. You need to hear her and let her grieve. Then you need to soothe her, you know, and you'll see that you're going to start cultivating this really beautiful relationship with yourself where you're like, I got me.
Yeah.
I got myself.
And it's not going to transfer into these like trust issues with others, or you know what I mean, because that's the snowball effect of not dealing with it, is that you just start believing these, oh well, you can't trust anyone or any company or any, you know, whatever.
But that is a part of you,
and that's going to keep you stagnated too.
Right? And it makes sense. That's the other thing. It makes sense. Of course, there's a part of you that's scared to trust another company. So let her speak too. Let that part come forward and be like, I don't know about trusting someone again. I'm scared to do it. And here's why, you know, and it makes sense. But the more you can kind of like come to terms with these emotions, you're going to get clarity. You're going to start flipping the script. You're going to start building this confidence in yourself that no matter what route you go, you're going to be okay. Why? Because you know how to listen to yourself. and you know how to
Yeah.
soothe yourself, which is really what we all need so that we don't have a bucket overflow and then have symptoms trying to say, listen to me.
Yeah. Well, I also think there's this, like, the panic of being short on time. Like, if I don't fix this now, you're out of money in 3 months or 2 months or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there's that, like, survival, like, we have no time to lose. And then as the days were on, and I'm so
You're like, but I'm
exhausted,
tired.
and another day's gone by where I haven't, like, really taken a huge chunk or a huge step toward, because I feel confused. I feel very much a lot of so this is so critical, because I won't be able to get into an activated way of being again until I clear the decks, baby. Anyway, Whitney, I love you.
I think we should have another
I feel like
episode.
we should have like 10 episodes. We should have another episode on like narcissism. We should do that and like surviving that. We need to have an episode. I think Whitney's
this should be part big, 1, and part 2 is
conversation
like ton more of her info.
Well, I think that we didn't even touch on this, but Whitney was on like a anxiety medication from a very early age, and then had to wean off of that after how many years?
Well, I was on it for 25 years in SSRI, and I started having a really bad reaction to it after I got vaccinated for COVID. Something went wonky with my system, which I know was my allostatic load from the pandemic. The vaccine pushed me over because it was like scary to go get the vaccine, and then my brain started interpreting everything as a threat. So even this medication that had been helping me for 25 years became a threat to my brain, and I started having bad reactions. So I actually had to come off of it cold turkey after 25 years.
25 years. And
go through a withdrawal.
That was so crazy.
And then they
for
put
her.
me on a benzo, which I was on for 3 months, and then I went to cold turkey detox off of that. So
I just think there's a lot in that conversation as well that we could get into, just from and really just this holistic healing of self that is completely devoid of any kind of pharmaceutical. Is just so powerful. Like, I feel like that power grab right there, and you just healing you in that way and purifying yourself of all of that is an unbelievable miracle. So I feel.
What
like
did you say? It was.
We'll have you back.
You said it multiple times. The coming back to yourself. Was it coming back to your? Isn't that how you said it? Like.
Yeah, coming home to yourself.
Coming home to yourself. That, for some reason, it keeps running through my mind.
Yeah.
I just love how
I think we get
it
lost,
just.
Yeah. It's being able to really know what you need and how to take care of yourself is coming home to yourself. I think we're looking for other solutions outside of ourselves so much. Like
Totally. I just love that, coming home to yourself.
And it's not to say you don't need support, but
yeah, gosh,
there's
I
an
love
empowerment
that
comes with coming home to yourself.
Well, when you really think about your life, right? You are with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from the moment you breathe your first breath until your last. And so if you can't be okay and cool and awesome with just being with you, then, we are in so many other people's company all the time that it becomes this, we latch ourselves on energetically to so many other people, when we have to really assess what our energy is doing. And we escape our own energies, and we escape our own thoughts, and we escape, so really that is what it is about, like, when's the last time you just sat with yourself, really had a conversation, like an intentional one, about who you are, what you want, who you want to be, how you want to be.
But really listening to that inner voice.
Because you are with you all the time. You are your biggest relationship.
Yeah.
That is the most meaningful relationship you have. It's
important,
just the one that you have with
sure.
you. Yes.
Yeah.
And it impacts every other relationship you have. And so if you don't really see the priority there, and the intention there, then the rest is garbage. So
I think we resist ourselves. We resist our
100%.
feelings. We resist our
100%.
who we are, our critic, how we look. What we resist, and it creates this tension and this stress. So when you come home to yourself, really, you're not resisting who you are anymore, no matter what that part is that day. Even if there is a part of you that's like having all these negative thoughts and thinking horrible things about someone else, you're not like, oh my God, I'm a bad person now. It's like, I'm a human being, and I'm having there's a part of me that's feeling that way right now, and it makes sense because maybe that person did something really annoying, so I don't need to judge myself. Yeah. It's okay. Like,
I think it's a recognition of all the other relationships that we have in our lives, right? If they don't suit us in that moment or we can't handle it, like with Karen, I love Karen. Karen and I talk every day, but when I'm struggling, I start to disappear. And it's easy for me to just sort of unplug from this person or that person, or my kids go to their dad's a couple days a week and I feel this sort of time to recover a little bit because I don't have to be on duty all the time. But when you boil it down, there's no escaping you. There's no running away from it. And even though we get used to being able to be like, oh, I'll just break those plans, or I don't have to keep that commitment or go to lunch with that person, or I don't have to show up for these other people. It's very easy to manage all of that and move the chess pieces around to keep yourself safe or whatever it is, or to keep you from having to deal with stuff. But you can't do that with you.
Yeah.
You can't do that with yourself.
No.
Man.
No. So,
we need more time.
Whitney, I adore you. You are such a fabulous guest. You do such a great job of like simplifying these theories about, diving into the nooks and crannies and the depths of who we are in such a beautiful way. I feel like you need to be a therapist. I feel like people have told you that in the past because you do.
Definitely.
I mean, Christ almighty, you got me crying over here.
I know we're both crying. I'm like,
and you are just such a wealth of knowledge. You really are, because you've walked through so many fires on your own, in your own journey, that speak to the pain that we feel, just the humanness that we feel, in the human experience. So just thank you for being here. I'm certain that the response from this episode will be like, we want more Whitney. So please do us the honor and come back for another episode. We love you.
Thank you.
So much more to talk about.
It was lovely to chat.
I loved
so
it all.
So much more. Thank you so much. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.